Welcome to Blue Glasses Math. In this podcast, we will explore how our self-perception as math teachers and learners influences our approach to life. Whether you identify as a math enthusiast or not, this podcast is for you. Are you a teacher, a parent, a school administrator, or a student?
Hey, Christopher. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. We have Christopher Danielson. So thrilled to have a conversation with you about all things math. How's it going?
It is going well. Thank you for the invitation. Always
Of
excited.
course. Well,
All things math.
we literally, I think, crashed into each other at the NCTM conference and at the Museum of Mathematics booth.
Yeah, has that
And
bruise healed?
your buddy. Yeah. All of my wounds from NCTM and NCSM have it took a little while for me to get back
Yes,
into the swing of things. I don't know about you, but whew, it was a wild ride. It was a lot of fun,
it is.
but exhausting. Yeah. So I start every episode with a conversation about your math story. So what are some of the moments, Christopher, that brought you to this moment in math class? I mean, in math class, in your math world, in your math life.
Yeah. One moment I remember was being in fourth grade with Ms. Livesay at Wines Elementary in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I remember that was the year that we were to memorize our multiplication tables. And I would tell this story to my future elementary teachers when I was teaching at a community college here in the Twin Cities 10 years ago. And I would ask them, like, there was the clothespin
Yeah.
that went down the clothesline, right? So you mastered your ones and then your twos and then your threes and then your fours. And every week on Friday, it was like, you're going to do whichever one you're on, that's the one you're doing. And so you'd get a half a sheet of paper that cut the tall, skinny way. And
Yep.
it would have all of the multiplication facts for that number. So if you were on the nines, then it might be 9 times 2, and then 9 times 7 would be the next line. So they were jumbled, and you had 1 minute.
Uh-huh.
And so I would think about each of them. So I would ask my students when I was teaching, future elementary teachers, where do you think my clothespin was on that relative? And they'd always be like, yeah, all the way down there by the 12s, right? I was like, absolutely not. Because I thought about each of them, like I would just think about them. So 9 times 3 was first. I'd be like, times 2 is 18, plus 10 minus 1, 27, write down 27. And so the minute would elapse and I wouldn't have it finished. And so my clothespin was way down because I wanted to think about stuff. And that wasn't what the goal of this activity was. But it didn't matter to me. Like, I get that there are people for whom that would have been a source of shame. It was never a source of shame for me. It was just like, it is what it is. Like, the thing that I want to do is not being valued. And as far as I can tell, there's no like major penalty for not getting where I need to go. So, whatever. Yeah. So I remember that moment. And then I remember being a high school student and reading Isaac Asimov's book titled On Numbers, which is out of print.
Not one that I've ever read. No.
Definitely worth finding, a used copy or a copy at a library or something. While I was getting like B minuses, C pluses in algebra, because I didn't find the algebra super interesting.
Yeah.
And so if you showed me once how to do a thing, I could do it.
Yeah.
And so then I would just do my math homework, in English class, which was the period that preceded math class. And so we're just kind of coasting along, able to get along. But I didn't have any expectation that like the thing I was fascinated with, right? The ways that Isaac Asimov was writing about mathematics. I didn't have any expectation that would be related to what I was doing in math class.
Interesting.
So
But his book was about numbers,
also,
on numbers.
what's that?
But his book was called On Numbers. So here you've got this book about on numbers, and
Mhm.
you're sort of like going through the motions in school, not seeing a connection at all.
Or expecting one. Yeah, just cruising along.
Just cruising along, doing your thing.
Yeah. And I think, so then the other moment is sort of a dawning awareness in myself as I kind of kept coasting through school, and then had some experiences that led me into teaching. But it wasn't until I was in classrooms working with a particular curriculum, the Connected Math Project in the mid-90s, I had a moment where I was planning. I was doing some work during the summer, some professional development work, and I was responsible for like working through a whole sixth grade unit, bits and pieces too, in order to present it to some of my colleagues so that we could, and they were working on some other unit. And
So you were writing the units, or you were working?
I was working through them as a teacher. I was like
Got it.
a third year teacher, and it was and the assignment was that we were supposed to do every task that was in the book.
Those books are those. I remember those books. I
Yeah.
mean, they're thin. They were the thin books, but they were meaty
Yes.
inside, right?
And if you were the sort of homeworky type problems were called the ACE questions. There's a lot of ACE questions in that book. So I did eventually give up on doing all the ACE questions because it was just too much. But I had previously had a perspective about these books are really rich and there's really beautiful math here. And I want my children to see that beautiful math, the students that are in my classroom. But in working through that book, I set myself a new challenge and I can't remember exactly why. And it was, okay, forget that you know all this math already. And instead, Christopher, your challenge to yourself is you can only work these tasks using the math that you would have already learned from this book or from previous books that you had worked through. No more using your college level math. Yes, it's beautiful that you can, but these kids don't care and it's not helpful to you or to them to do that. So your challenges. And so when that became a new intellectual challenge for me, like how can I put together simpler tools to do interesting things? That was a profound moment of change for me.
So so seeing the problem from the eyes of the child who's walking into that 6th grade math class and just the tools that they're bringing with, and that's it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I love that you were working through the actual problems in the book. And sorry, was there a reason why you guys were doing that? I mean, I know this is kind of a loaded question.
So we
but...
were, there was at the time some grant money that Connected Math had gotten at the same time that they were writing the grant to write the curriculum. They also wrote grants for professional development funding. And so a bunch of people came to Michigan State University and spent time together learning about curriculum and pedagogy and working through math problems. And so part of that then was not just us being passive recipients, but also it's time to step up, right? And learn something and own something well enough to be able to share it with others. And so I think the authors would take us through like the first 3 units. And then as we got further into the week, or I think it was 2 weeks the first year, we were broken into groups. And so, you would take bits and pieces too, and somebody else would take covering and surrounding. And then it was our job to present that to each other.
It's fascinating because I work with teachers in schools. And one of the things, people are always asking me, like, how do I support the teachers, right? Or like when leaders ask me, coaches ask me, right? I'm a coach myself. And then the reflection that I always come back to is we've got to do math. They've got to do the math, right? We have to give teachers the opportunity to think mathematically. And it sounds like, especially with connected math, you were really deep into that thinking.
Yes. And the time, that our time was paid
100%.
for in the summer to do this work.
Yeah, I say yes to that.
Yeah. I mean, time is.
Yeah. Giving teachers this professional time and space to sit and think so that they can then come back to their classrooms and appreciate that process of thinking. But doing it in like a 30-minute prep is not the ideal situation.
No, you got too much else going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Okay. So then now you do math with your kids. That's your website, right? But you do a lot of things. Right? And so what is it about your story that led you to, I mean, you make a website, you have a career, you have what was it about this kind of trajectory that turned you to, because you said you started teaching. Did you start teaching math right away or did you teach other things?
Yep.
Okay.
7th grade.
Okay. So you went right to 7th grade math. Great. But what was it?
French, that's a whole
and French.
Yeah, that's a whole story. That's not a place to contain. So that moment of realizing that there was interesting and valuable intellectual work in imagining how a kid could put some math tools to a problem that I might see as a sophisticated one requiring deep mathematics. In fact, remind me about, I'm going to give you a spiral example. Remind me about,
great. All right. Spiral examples.
But that moment has then been that insight has been for me one that I have chased in a whole bunch of different directions. So I've been able to use that perspective to write curriculum, for the which one doesn't belong work, and for math on a stick. Like, what is in valuing as mathematical the tools that children already have access to, the ideas that they already have or that they've learned somewhere else, and seeing that as pure mathematics. There is a line that I have developed. I can't remember where I first wrote it, probably I think it was a talk at NCTM 12 years ago or something. It's, I used to think and now I know.
I used to think and now I know.
And so I used to think that like doing mathematics was the purview of research mathematicians, right? That it was about that to do mathematics meant to stretch the boundaries of what all of humanity knows about whatever the mathematical objects
Yeah.
that you're studying. But now I know that doing mathematics is stretching the boundaries of your own ideas. Just because you already know a way to add fractions doesn't mean that I'm not doing mathematics as I'm coming to understand possibly the same thing that you already know or possibly something new. So I used to think doing mathematics only meant research mathematicians pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. But now I know that it is every individual learner pushing the boundaries of what they already know.
That is a quotable quote.
All right.
That is a quotable. That's going on a little card.
Right. Use it. Yeah.
I
Put me on a
totally
slide
will.
with a forest in the background.
Oh, it's like one of those like deep thoughts by Jack Handy. Do you remember that from
Yes,
Saturday Night
exactly right.
Live?
So
Deep thoughts.
I do indeed. So the spiral example.
Yes, please.
Do you know which one doesn't belong well at all?
I love which does not belong. Are you kidding? I use it all the time when I'm modeling.
But
Yeah.
the book set. Hang on, I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah. Which one does not belong? So, yeah, it's magic.
The book opens with this set, which is simple enough for everybody to have something to say about.
Yep.
But there's also a danger in this set, right? There's a triangle, there's a square standing on its corner, there's a rhombus on its side, and then there's a rhombus in the classic diamond orientation. There's a danger in it in that.
Wait, danger. Why would there be danger? Give me a minute to think about where there'd be danger.
Okay.
I think, does it have something to do with the outline? Okay. Anyway, go ahead. Where do you see the danger?
When a group of children looks at this example, there may very well be a kid who's in that room who thinks to themselves, I have something to say about this shape in the lower left-hand side.
Yep.
But I know if I call it a diamond, my teacher will tell me I'm not supposed to use that word. But I don't remember what the right word is, right? So everybody knows that there is vocabulary, like there are words that are approved or not approved for these shapes. And so there is a risk that could get in the way of some kids participating, right? So among my favorite pages in the book is the spiral page.
Yeah.
We pull that up. It's complex. This is not a place to start a classroom with which one doesn't belong because the properties are subtle. But when we get here, everybody in the room knows that nobody in the room has strong vocabulary for describing spirals. So the gesturing, the making up of terminology, the I'm not sure how to describe it, but kind of talk, like that tentative talk, everybody expects it from everybody else and knows that the teacher is expecting it or the goofy long-haired guy who came in to do which one doesn't belong with. So I wanted to talk about the spirals because one of the things that comes up is kids will talk about how long the spirals are. And we can pretty quickly get to a place where we agree that this would be the longest one.
Yeah.
So we can rule that out. Like if we're trying to talk about which is longest or put them in order. Because a lot of times in a which one doesn't belong conversation, like we do the which one doesn't belong, but then there's some other property, some other conversation that we're spurred to have that isn't strictly about which one doesn't belong. It's just about these shapes because they're interesting. And then this one in the lower right and the one in the upper left, those two are the same as each other except flipped over. So they're the same length as each other. And so we end up looking at these two and trying to decide which one of them, if you strained it out, right, piece of string was straightened out, which one of them is longer than the other. So Pam, which one do you think is longer than the other?
Okay. I'm going to guess the one on the left, so closer to where your hand is.
This one over here?
I'm going to guess that's, yes. And I'm going to give you my reason.
Please do.
My reason is because it's like, hold on. How do I want to say this? It's like a tighter spiral, but it's about the same. See, I'm going to make up my tentative talk. My tentative talk here is that like the end of the spiral, like on the outside of the spiral, they're kind of in the same spot, right? So then if I'm going around, I don't know, I just think it looks like tighter. There's more line in there. I don't know. That's my tentative talk. There's more line in there to me.
So counter argument I'll sometimes hear is that this one, like the distance from here to where it ends is bigger. It's like it has to reach further into the center than this one does. And so people will say, maybe it's this one. But then the question arises of how do we decide? right? If we want to be sure, how do we decide?
Okay.
And there was a long period of time, like months, as I was developing this book, where I had a kindergarten way, which I'll tell you about in a moment, and a calculus way to know.
Ooh, amazing.
And my experience through the kind of work that we're talking about and the bits and pieces to only use the tools that you have. My experience is that if there is a kindergarten way to know a thing, and there's also a calculus way to know a thing, there's usually a middle school way to know a thing. And for a long time, I didn't have it. So in kindergarten, what you would do is you would take a string and you would carefully wrap it around the spiral, and then you straighten out the string.
That's
And
where
it
I
turns
was.
with these two spirals, doing that is good enough. Like there's a big enough difference between their sizes. It's
Okay.
good enough to know for sure. And the calculus way is we will describe the spiral with polar coordinates. And then it turns out we actually have to use some approximation techniques, but we can cut it up into as many tiny pieces as we want and then calculate it. And calculus answer comes out the same as the kindergarten answer does. But I didn't have a middle school way. So I was working on this again with my future elementary teachers, and one of them came up with the middle school way. Would you like to hear the middle school way?
I would. Tell me, because I was in middle school. I'm a middle school geek.
So this person said, if you cut the spirals across, like with a horizontal line, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half circles.
Okay.
More or less.
Yeah.
Same deal over here.
Yes.
And when you look at the inside half circle here, this
Yep.
half circle is smaller than this half circle in radius. And if you make all those comparisons all the way through, it's going to be true.
Ha! That's
So
amazing.
5 bigger half circles are more than 5 smaller half circles.
Smaller half circles.
Objection there could be, but each one isn't really a half circle. Great. Do the same thing and make them quarter circles, make them eighth circles, make them 16th circles. Like cut them into as small pieces as you want. Pretty soon they're going to be small enough you can't tell the difference between the spirally piece and an arc of a circle. And in every case, these are going to be, each of those 16ths of a circle is going to be bigger than each of the 16ths of the circle over here. And so away you go. And the middle school then leads to, like, that's what you're doing with the calculus answer. The middle school leads to the calculus answer, which says if it was infinitely many little pieces. But yeah, beautiful. I didn't think of it myself.
That is
My students thought
fantastic. So wait, who decided? Who was it? Students who figured that out?
Yeah, future elementary teacher in my math for elementary teachers classroom.
Amazing from a middle school perspective. I'd be curious to know if you brought that into a middle school, if kids would come to that.
Yeah, so I can't remember if I've ever heard that come out of kids' mouths, but fun stuff, a fun thing I have heard
Tell me.
come out of kids' mouths is a second grader who said to me when we got to this page, none of these shapes belongs because on all the previous pages, such as the one that we saw at the very beginning, on all the previous pages, they were either colored in or you could color them in. These, if you tried to color them in, you would just end up coloring the whole page, which is great.
That is amazing because when I first saw those shapes, my first inclination was to close them all. I was like, I just want to close them all. First, I was like, oh, they're like snails. And then I'm like thinking Fibonacci. And then I'm like, I just want to close them all up.
Yeah, nice. I told that story to a 5th grade classroom like a week later. And 5th grade student says to me, I get what that kid was saying, but she's wrong. Here's why. Those are lines that have been curled up. Those are skinny rectangles that have been curled up.
Oh my goodness.
And those skinny rectangles are colored in.
The things that we hear when we stop and listen to what kids are saying. I mean, I would have never in a million years come up with that thought, but it's valid.
Absolutely.
They're skinny rectangles.
Are colored in. Yeah. So she's wrong.
Amazing. So good.
Well, kids are great. They're smart.
Kids are so good. Kids are shine. Yes. When we give them space, and circling back when you said spiral, I was like, I didn't think it was going to be a shape of a spiral. I thought it was like a spiral to the story.
Something. Yeah.
But if we circle back to your experience, like even in your elementary school when you're describing your approach to the multiplication tables and how you were looking for all these creative ways to do 9 times whatever it was, it's like. Imagine if your teacher had a window into what was going on inside your mind. It's so much deeper. And I feel like sometimes we are such in a rush right now, especially in the world we live in right now. We're in such a rush to get kids just to like the end of chapter 12. Really don't give the space to have those amazing conversations. Anywho, I don't want to be down like, doom and gloom here, but I do want to talk about math on a stick because when the first time I actually met you like face to face, not in person, but was on Friends of Flynn. You were doing a Friends of Flynn for Mike and Zach. And you started talking about math on a stick, and I'm like, what is math on a stick? I need to know more about this because I
You gotta
just,
come
yeah.
play with us
So tell
next
me.
summer.
Yeah.
Math on a Stick is
Yes.
a large scale, outdoor, playful, creative math space for children and families that takes place every year at the Minnesota State Fair. We just
So
celebrated our
fun.
10th year. Minnesota
Amazing.
State Fair is the second largest fair in the country.
Amazing.
1.9 million people go to the fair over the course of 12 days. They don't all come to Math on a Stick, of course, but even a small fraction of 1.9 million people is a lot of people. We are all volunteer run. We have about 9 volunteers on site at a time. So do the math, and we end up with about 400-ish volunteer slots and about 250, 300 people who fill those slots.
Wait,
Wait,
so
so
people volunteer to come work at the stand, and there's that many people. And where do these people come from? I want to talk about that for a minute. Where are these
yeah,
volunteers coming from?
a lot of them are. So one of our partnering agencies is the Minnesota Council of Teachers of Math.
Oh, yes, of
So we
course.
get a lot of MCTM members. But we get a lot of teachers who aren't MCTM members, but they know about it now. The first year was tough, but now it's people who have been there, their friends have been there. There are several things that require volunteers to run at the fair. So there are people who know that, like, if you volunteer for a thing at the fair, then you get a ticket into the fair, which is not nothing, right?
Right, right, right.
And we also, we'll sometimes get teams from a corporation that
Oh,
your
yeah.
corporation encourages people, so from like Boston Scientific is
Hmm.
a medical device designer and manufacturer that's based in the Twin Cities. And so we'll get like a team of 9 people from one department at Boston Scientific because they're going off to volunteer at something that supports math and STEM learning
Yeah.
um, in the state. Now we get parents whose kids have aged out of going to the fair with them anymore. Now they're teens and they want to go to the fair by themselves.
I'm in that state.
It had been a space for them to bring their kids. And so now they want to offer that. They want to help give back to the next round of kids that comes through. Yeah, we get
So,
volunteers from all walks of life.
okay, so that took me in a different direction. But what is math on a stick? What is it like? If I'm showing up
Yeah.
to math on a stick at the Minnesota State Fair?
Yeah, so about 15, 20 different playful, creative activities. Some of them are tabletop,
Yep.
and some of them are body scale. One of my favorites is the simplest, and anybody can do this. We went to Home Depot and we bought 2 dozen because that seemed like a nice number of the square concrete pavers,
Yep.
and then painted them and put them into a nice like path. We use it as a sort of an invitation into this outdoor space from the sidewalk, starting at 0 and then going up to 23, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3. And it's kind of a winding, curvy path that goes into the space. And
Okay.
all day long, you will see young children. I mean, you'll see people of all ages playing around with it, but you'll see young children like lead their families into this math space because it's obvious to them how to participate on this thing, right? There are stepping stones. I want to step on one of them and jump to the next one. And
So cool.
they'll say the numbers out loud as they're doing it. They'll get to the end and then it's time to turn around. And a lot of times they'll count their way backwards
Count
as they go back
backwards.
the other way. You would think, and I expected the first year that like, kid going from 0 to 23 and kid going from 23 to 0, they're going to bump into each other and like there's going to be some kind of standoff. And a lot of times, like they'll stop and they'll look at each other. They always work it out. Always, always, always
Ah,
work it out.
you're
Not a
like,
problem at all. We've had, of course, teenagers who try to hop the Fibonacci sequence, and then becomes a really interesting question that arises about: do they want to hop on the numbers that are in the Fibonacci sequence, or do they want their hops to be the size of the
ooh.
numbers? And so, if I start at 0, my first jump is going to be to 1. Should I hop again on 1, or should I do the second one? Should get me to 2. And then should I go from 2 to 4? And now I'm hopping on numbers that aren't in the Fibonacci sequence, but the jumps are. And so that
Huh.
relationship between like distance traveled and the location becomes a really interesting.
It's just so playful and accessible, right?
Mhm.
It just opens it up, which speaks volumes to the reason why I got so distracted with the whole volunteer thing and how the amount of people you get to volunteer at this. It's like clearly it's making an impact on how people feel about themselves as math people, right? Because,
That's the hope.
is this something that you would want to happen at other places? Or I mean, I think it would be amazing. We have a Monmouth County. I'm in Monmouth County, New Jersey, and I'm like, I could totally see this at the Monmouth County Fair. But then I'm thinking, people gonna understand? I mean, obviously, the way you build it, people
You don't. There's nothing to understand. I mean,
are
I
not
did have
understand.
this
But I
really
mean,
fun experience.
yeah,
So we have these tiling turtles, table full of tiling turtles, like 200 of them on a table. That's one of our activities.
so fun.
And at the end of maybe the first night of the first year of Math on a Stick, as we're open from 9 in the morning till 8 in the evening. And as the day goes by, like you get different populations coming through,
Sure.
right? 10 to 2 is like the hot time for the young children and their families.
Before nap.
And then, there's a grandstand concert every night. And so a lot of times, if it's like a currently popular act, you'll end up with, roving groups of teens or young adults came through on their way to or from the concert. And I remember this group that came through slightly inebriated, but they were having a good time. They weren't causing any trouble. And a couple of them sat down and were like, these turtles are amazing. They were playing with the turtles. And there was this one woman, she was kneeling at the end of the table, kind of watching her friends. And she looks at me and she says, tell me, what is my purpose here? I don't know. I have no idea, man.
Like here in this world or here with these
Yeah,
turtles?
exactly. I don't know. Either of those questions, I don't know. But you might have fun if you put your hands on the turtles and started putting them together.
What is tiling turtles? Are they like turtles that kind of like tessellate? Kind of?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
they are.
that's what I'm picturing.
I have some.
I feel like I should know what a tiling turtle is. I've
I
seen
have
them.
some.
Oh, yes. They're so cute.
Yeah, so these were designed by a former colleague of mine at Normandale, the community college where I taught, and he collaborates with people, mathematicians all over the world who are interested in studying tessellations and symmetries. He does beautiful inlaid woodwork and left some of these scraps out. He was making chessboards and, inlaid boxes and things. And I was like, man, I want kids to play with these. And so we scaled them up so that they're not chokeable. And there's about 200 of these. They come in 2 flavors, by the way. There's the light colored, these are maple wood, and then darker colored walnut. Just natural hardwood, laser cut. And you will, when you watch kids play with them, like the first thing they have to do is work out like the geometry and the spatial visualization. How do these two things, how are they going to fit together? And once they finally like get the leg to fit into the neck there's like that little squirt of pleasure juice in your brain. Like that feels really good. And you want to do it again. So there's always more turtles because you've got 200 of them. Right. And then, so eventually, if they've played with them long enough, they'll notice that there are 2 colors. And so like a lot of times there'll be a second round of, okay, I get how these go together now. I can do this pretty efficiently. What if I made a checkerboard? What if I did a square of light turtles and surrounded them with dark turtles? What if together we worked to make a big shape that was shaped like a turtle? Like about once a year at Math on a Stick, there'll be some group of kids who has this idea about making a turtle out of tiling turtles, and then someone will come find me and show me their beautiful work. And it's all great.
Yeah. I mean, the puzzling, the wonder, the creativity that goes into all of this is so beautiful. And I applaud you for doing that. And just backing up, how did you decide to do Math on a Stick at this fair?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
where did it come
Talking
from?
Math with Your Kids was a blog that grew out of my old teaching blog.
Yep. I'm looking at it right now.
Because my old blog was called Overthinking My Teaching. And it was like reports from classrooms of stuff that was interesting to me that I knew I had more to say than any publisher would ever want to print. So I got to have an outlet for it, right? For these ideas that I'm developing and experimenting and getting from my students. And then my children were born and started to mature. And I realized a thing that I didn't know before, which is that CGI did a good job of helping me understand that kids have some ideas that school can build on, right? That they're not blank slates for mathematics when they come in. But a thing I hadn't picked up on because I hadn't had young children in my life was how rich and sophisticated their questions and inquiries and ideas are. And so when I started to notice that in my own kids, I was like, of course my kids are special, but they're also kind of not special, right? Like I have no evidence.
We all feel that way.
That the ways these kids, like the inquiry these kids are engaged in their own minds is different because they're my kids. These are clearly normal ways for children to explore their environment. And so I would love to document and share and help other people understand what that looks like. But then I wanted to share it with parents who were not didn't identify like as mathematically sophisticated or, deeply educated in mathematics. But I didn't want them to have to wade through my thoughts about teaching calculus, or fraction addition algorithms. I wanted it to be more accessible. And so that's when the new blog spun off. And there was a period of time where I thought the next step from the blog was a book about talking math with your kids. So You come from an elementary background,
I do.
Pam?
Well, middle school. I taught middle
Okay.
school.
So you may or may not be familiar with the Read Aloud Handbook.
It sounds very familiar,
So
but
Jack Perletsky, he's an author, a poet,
okay.
and he wrote a
Okay.
book called the Read Aloud Handbook, which is like,
Oh, yes. Yes.
here's why it's important to read aloud with kids at home and in classrooms. And then the second half of the book, which is really like 2/3 of the book, is excellent read alouds for all sorts of situations and age levels and all that.
I think I
And
read it
so,
as like a parenting book
yeah, so in my
when I
mind,
was, yeah.
like what needs to exist is the read aloud handbook for math. And so I went around and sort of pitching that to some book agents and some publishers, and the answer just overwhelmingly was great idea, going to be hard to execute. Good luck. Right? There was no interest in, wow, I'd really be intrigued in trying to do some problem solving around what that might look like. So over the course of a year or two, it became clear to me that the world wasn't ready for a book that said, here's how to talk about math with your kids. So instead, maybe what I need to do is create experiences, objects, books that will create those conversations. And then maybe we'll start to build a world where later on they're ready to read about it, but they're not ready for like that overview analysis. Instead, what the world might be ready for is things that you can put into parents and kids' hands that will create conversations. And so it was in that spirit that I first sat down at lovely literacy space at the fair. It's called the Alphabet Forest. That was started by a children's book author who's local here, Deb Frazier, and she was an artist in residence at the fair one summer. And then over the course of the next year, developed this thing, the Alphabet Forest, which is volunteer run. And they've got a bunch of different activities all based around the alphabet game, where you get a strip of paper that has all the letters, and you have to go out into the fair and find 2 words that start with A and 2 words that start with B and blah, 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 and bring it back and you get a ribbon. And as soon as I sat down in this space, I was like, how did I miss this? And we got to build a math version of this.
Yes.
So she was on site. And so I grilled her about it. And how did you pitch it? Who you work with? Like, who's the contact person? All that sort of stuff. And so then spent a couple months after the fair regrouping with my online friends and colleagues. And together we formulated a plan. And after I learned how to work with a large organization, because I had absolutely no idea. As a teacher, what do we know? We know how to run a classroom full of 30 kids. Maybe we can like quiet kids down, an auditorium full of kids for an assembly or something. But yeah, we don't know like how organizations work. We think we have to do it all ourselves.
Yes. There's no partnering. There's no sharing of,
Yeah. So I learned a lot over that year, but we got it up and running. It was 10 years ago.
That's so cool. I think it's so cool. I mean, just even like the idea of being at a fair where there's so much distraction and so much noise. I can imagine, you said this is 1.4 million people come through this fair?
1.9 million people.
Sorry, 1.9. 1.9 people over the course of 4 days.
12 days.
Sorry, 12 days. Sorry, you cut out there. Okay. So, but still, that's an enormous amount of people. And I just can think about, like, I'm sure there's rides and probably a part where there's animals and like all the things, right? But
all
then
the food and
the food, but then you have people like jammed into your. I want to come to Minnesota just to see this fair. I'm
you
like
would
literally
not be the first, and we would welcome you and give you the VIP treatment. Just let me know that you're coming, and we will.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna be like,
you.
honey, we're going to Minnesota for the fair.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like,
it's right here in the cities, right here in the Twin Cities. So very easy to fly into and out of. Labor Day weekend is a 3-day weekend, so you come in on like Friday night or Saturday morning, then Saturday afternoon, maybe also Sunday morning at the fair. Sunday afternoon, you can either go home or enjoy the splendor of the Twin Cities in late summer, and then you still have Monday to travel home and get ready for your work.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I've got to wait. Maybe not this summer, but next summer, because I've still got one kid in the mix here.
Yeah.
Labor Day is when school starts up. But yes, I mean, I should say I still have one kid at home.
Right, I got you.
I'm not like trying to like get rid of them.
They'll have
I know. It'd be like, wait, I can miss the first day of senior year of high school? Yeah, sure. Because we're going to do math in Minnesota.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay, so currently you are working with CPM?
That's correct.
That's the story?
Work at CPM as Director of Strategic Projects. And
fun.
It's a new position, and have the opportunity to work across a bunch of departments to foster collaboration and creativity everywhere. Fabulous people to work with, so welcoming to me as a new person. Although I have a history with a bunch of folks there and with the organization through my work when I was at Desmos. So
It's probably
have the opportunity to work closely with them.
They probably pulled you right in. They're like, "Oh, we know exactly who we need." That's amazing. And it sounds like with all of your work with Math on a Stick and everything else you've done across your career, I feel like it's just like a perfect spot for you. I mean, I don't know if it's a perfect spot for you, but I mean, you've like developed all the skills to do all the things that you need to do.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's the
Nowhere to
hope.
go.
Yeah, that's amazing. Awesome. Okay, I wrap up the episode with my favorite question that I came to probably about like 10 or 12 episodes ago. And the question is, what gives you hope in the math education space right now?
Yeah. Children, right? Children's
Mm,
minds and how brilliant and curious and interested they are in understanding their world. That's it.
so
When
beautiful.
having moments going through math on a stick pictures like brings me joy. So, always taking pictures of beautiful things that kids make and do. The frustration for me about math on a stick is that it only takes place 12 days a year, right? And so those are 12 exhausting days because I want to soak them up, right? And
Yeah.
be as involved as I can, but also it is very much a marathon, not a sprint. Yes, what gives me hope is children's minds and knowing that they are beautiful and open and curious and creative.
And fostering that is so important. Christopher, it's been such a joy to talk with you today. Thank you so much. Where can people connect with you if they wanted to connect with you after the episode?
.com, there's a contact page there. That's the easiest way to
Perfect.
get something in there. Used to be on Twitter when it was Twitter. Now it's something that is just not as good an experience. So I'm on Blue Sky, Triangle
Yeah.
Man.
Triangle Man.
For Triangle Man or for Christopher Danielson at Blue Sky, you'll find me. I think that's about it for really active social media these days.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like what I'm hearing more and more people being like, you know what, just send me an email or just connect with me on my website. Like
Yeah.
there's much less of the connect with me on social media, even though it's
Yeah, still love to connect there. It's just not as dynamic a space as,
yeah.
the old days of Twitter, and we still have some great conversations. So do come join us there.
Yay.
Know that there are fewer people on Blue Sky or even who know what it is than there were when
Yeah.
I used to put out a Twitter handle. So
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Christopher. And yeah, I really appreciate this conversation. You're amazing. Thanks for all you do.
you bet. Thank you.
Take care.
I'm Pam Brett. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Blue Glasses Math. Please follow me wherever you get your podcasts